Welcome back. This is the Big Blue Banter New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato, and tonight we're coming to you to recap a Giants game where they not only made the playoffs and clinched it, they made it in decisive fashion. This wasn't a back into the playoff situation. This wasn't we won an NFC East at 7-9 like they almost did 2 years ago. This was legit. The Giants came out in a win and in game and absolutely dismantled the Colts. We went into this game today, my brother and I, saying, wouldn't it be nice for just one blowout win? And he asked me what my key to the game was, Nick. I said win a turnover battle by 1-2. The Giants didn't win the turnover battle. It was tied, and they still dominated and dismantled their opponent today. That just goes to show you how much this team wants to play for that. Like, they are fully bought into whatever it is that Joe Schoen has tried to kind of instill on these players, and obviously Brian Daboll and the entire coaching staff. Let me read you a few numbers that were cracked today. This was the Giants' largest margin of victory since 2014. 2014. That's literally almost a decade ago, just under a decade ago. And it wasn't a win and in game. They blew them out in their best game. They broke a 43-game under 30-point streak today. And I know people could say, oh, if Saquon doesn't, fall down, they break it earlier this year, but they didn't, right? This was the actual game where they went over 30. My brother and I were like, are they going to go over 40? They were very close to going over 40, and they probably could have if they needed to. They also secured their first winning home record since 2016, the last time they made playoffs. One more fun fact. The last time the Giants made the playoffs, they had a pick six from Landon Collins in 2016. If you remember, it was during that London game. And this year, they had
Rams,
another
right?
pick six, or the Rams, yep, in London.
Yep.
And another pick six from Collins. This is a weird fun fact that doesn't even matter, but still fun. And there's a lot to talk about here. But, man, a few things I love. One, you have to win this game, and you come out and you win it in decisive fashion. You show, okay, we're not just some team that's backing into the playoffs. We're a team that might be able to make noise. And why is that? Maybe true because of the second thing. The second thing is they expanded their pass game last week against the Vikings. And everyone's like, oh, well, maybe it's just a matchup. Maybe it's because they played this awful Vikings pass defense. This week, the Colts were not an awful defense. Like, if you look at DVOA and those advanced metrics, I know they're not as good as what they were, and they had Kenny Moore injured and things like that. And obviously, Yannick was out for this game, their best pass rusher. But regardless, this is a pretty decent team from DVOA standpoint. This is not like the worst defense in the NFL, Vikings level type thing. And they continued with that expansion of their pass game. Yeah, there weren't any deep shots in this game, but we saw a lot more of the quick game. We saw the timing continue to be great in the quick game. The rapport with Daniel Jones and Hodgins, bam, it is like glue right now. Those two are playing so well together. Richie James, another guy who seems to be having this amazing rapport with Daniel Jones right now. And so what did I see today? I saw a team that needed to win this game, dominated, won in decisive fashion, and I saw a continuation of hope for the pass game, because the pass game, if we want to make a run in the playoffs or at least win a football game in the playoffs, the pass game is going to have to play like it has these past 3 weeks. And that's something that's really stood out to me. And one more thing here, one more interesting fun fact. 2 out of the last 3 games, Daniel Jones was not sacked in 2 out of the last 3 games. That speaks volumes to what's going on with this offensive line, because we have ramped up the passing. We are now a pass first team. Today we ran the Giants, I should say, not we. 89% 11 personnel in this game. 89%. And a lot of shotgun and a lot of pass first. And despite all of that, not a single sack on Daniel Jones. And that's 2 of the last 3 games. So definitely something else that stood out to me in this game, Nick. But I'm just really amped up. I'm really excited. It was a lot of fun. I mean, look, the Giants haven't been this in a while. And even 2016, I think this team's better than the 2016 team. I really do. They didn't have a single blowout win in 2016. They almost lost to the Browns in like an easy win, like in Cleveland, where they're supposed to kill them. They're like 15-point favorites, and they like won by 6 that game. Every game was a squeaker that year, 2016. They had no offense. They had no real hope for their offense in the playoffs, though Eli then played like an unreal game in Green Bay, but had a ton of drops from Shepard and Beckham. Yeah. And Shepard had a big one too, but it feels a little different, man. It feels like they're clicking a little bit at this time right now, to me at least. And so I'm very excited.
I'm very excited as well. And you brought the 11 personnel package. If you look at basically since that week 13 tie against Washington, the Giants have just completely altered their offense to a much more pass heavy approach out of 11 personnel. And they're successfully running the football out of 11 personnel over that span. But in this game, dude, Daniel Jones finished with 177 passing yards, right? 2 touchdowns. People would be like, oh, well, that's not a lot. It's like he didn't need to do anything else. Like he
Yeah, it
was
was
so
almost all in the
efficient.
first half.
19 of 24 on third down. I think they were 4 of 7. He was coming up huge with his legs, had 2 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, 11 carries for 91 yards. Just a lot of smart decision making, man. Like there were just chants throughout the stadium, Dan, of Daniel Jones, and he earned those chants. Like he is playing really good football within the confines of Mike Kafka and Brian Daboll's system. And I'm really happy for him because last year, this team literally kneeled the football backed up on their 1 yard line, just forfeiting games essentially. Like this team was an absolute shit show, for a lack of a better term, last year. And right now, the Giants have clinched a playoff berth. They're going to the playoffs for the first time since 2016. And I'm absolutely hyped about that fact. And it looks like, and we could talk about this maybe a little bit later, I'm sure we'll be talking about it over the next couple weeks. There's a 91, I think, percent chance, according to Doug Analytics, that the Giants are going to be going back to Minneapolis to play the Vikings, who I feel like this team actually can beat, at least have a much better chance of beating than, let's say, the 49ers, who I even think the Giants can compete with them as well. So I just think it's a good place for the New York Football Giants to be in right now because they're headed to the playoffs, baby.
Yeah, I don't really feel, based on how the Giants are playing right now, and we'll get to this a little bit later, or at some point this week, the only team I really don't feel like they compete with is a full strength, full healthy Philadelphia Eagles team right now. Even Dallas, thinking back to that Thanksgiving game, there were some cracks in the armor. Yeah, Dallas won that game and it ended up being a handy win. But remember, if Jones changed the trajectory on that ball to Barkley in the flat and completes that pass, Barkley could house that thing, and that could be a whole different game. And there were other weird things that happened, that weird, lineman a little bit downfield that took back the first Hodgins touchdown that like really flipped the momentum in that game. I don't know. I feel like Dallas has been way exposed in the secondary lately. They obviously had a good game this past week because they played Dobbs or whatever, but even Dobbs weirdly moved the ball a little bit against them on like 8 days of notice and playing quarterback for a team without knowing the system. So
the cornerback opposite of Diggs has been a real issue for Dallas. Like that's been an issue. And Mike Kafka and Brian Daboll will exploit that. And the Giants actually have that 11 personnel package right now where, yes, they don't have Justin Jefferson. They don't have that absolute stud, but Darius Slayton, Isaiah Hodgins, and Richie James, they are competing right now. They are playing playoff level football. They are playing on a team and starting on a team and moving the football for a team that has clinched the playoffs. These aren't just scrubs anymore. Like that narrative needs to go.
It definitely does. And I think they'll be challenged if we do, at some point face Dallas. That's all. So way down the line, Dallas is the 5 seed most likely. Though now Dallas could win the division. We'll talk about all those factors in a little bit here. But I did want to mention one more thing about what you mentioned with the Daniel Jones chant. My brother said it was the first time he can remember since he was drafted, Daniel Jones, where the whole stadium rallied around him, really galvanized around him, with those Daniel Jones chants. I thought it was cool what Daboll did. Daboll left him in for the final series when we were all like, I was like, what are you doing, dude? Take every starter out. What are we doing here? We do not need a random injury. But it was cool because he wanted to do it on purpose so he could play him those 2 snaps and then mid-drive pull Jones and get the fans into it, because it was a very sly move to get the fans. And I remember like a couple years ago, the last time I can remember a chant, my brother and I were talking about it, that he was, he witnessed today at the stadium. Or like that was when Eli Manning played that Dolphins game, Eli Manning's last game, very similar type feel. I also think something else Matt told me, who was at the game, my brother Matt, who's one time could join the podcast. Unfortunately, it was last year after the Washington game when we had that field goal to miss where they got the devastating penalty. Yeah, I need him to come back on a good note at some point. But though he is kind of funnier and more entertaining when things are going bad. But having said that, he said it was the first. No, he wasn't the first. He said what he could see from his view is just how the different players and coaches on the Giants interact with and love Daniel Jones on that sideline. Like, regardless of what you think, like maybe it is fun. I'm sure it's fun as hell to play with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, especially if you're a wide receiver, right? The ball's in your hand a lot. You look over his shoulder, it's there a lot, deep down the field, intermediate, whatever. But you know what? Everyone else on a football team has to love a quarterback like Jones, who's literally going to come in, work his ass off every single day. Bye week, he's there 6:30 in the morning on his first off day allowed. Then every single time he scrambles or the play's broken, he's going to go for every single yard. He's going to put his shoulder down. He's going to take the tough hits. He's going to make those runs to the goal line and then take the hit but get it in. I mean, these guys love that. And I watched when he came off the field, or my brother told me when he came off the field, that like there was just a slew of different Giants, like big names, Dexter Lawrence, smaller names that you don't even care, like that aren't even playing right now or back in the roster guys. They're just like coming up to him and giving him a hug and congratulating him and talking to him, because like it's a big moment for him too. And I think everybody recognizes that, Daboll as well. And so it was just a cool thing to see, I thought.
Saquon Barkley praised him in the post-game interviews, just really just talked so highly of his leadership and how he leads by example and things along those lines. And those are all things we knew about
Right.
Daniel Jones, right? Like that's not a surprise, but now you're seeing success. And when you watch this game, it's hard to not look at Daniel Jones and be like, yeah, this is the Colts. The Colts suck. But what are you supposed to do in those gotta have it moments? You're supposed to beat down on shitty opponents. And that's
Right.
exactly what Daniel Jones did. And he didn't just do it with his arm, although he did. He also did it with his legs. He did it in a variety of different ways. So I'm really happy for the kid. I think he has deserved this and he has earned it. And I'm looking forward to watching this team as they go into week 18, which is now a much more, I think, important game than we originally thought it would be, at least a couple weeks ago, because Philadelphia has lost their last 2 games. And in order for them to secure the number 1 seed, they need to beat the New York Giants next week.
So I have my own thoughts on that game. We'll get to it a little bit later, Nick, because I don't think it's going to be shared by everyone. I'm not even sure it's going to be shared by you, but we'll see when we get to that point. I want to talk about more stuff from this
Are
game.
you going to talk about resting the guys?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll get to it, but I'm not big on trying to fight to win this game personally. I just think, look, we have a weird, unique scenario right here. I don't know any other season where a 6 seed gets a chance at a bye week, right? And these 1 seeds that are grinding for the bye week, the Eagles or whoever it's going to be from the East, and then whoever, it depends a lot on this Monday night game for the AFC, whoever wins those 1 seeds in each conference, they're not going to be like, let's have a scrimmage this week. Let's put everyone on the field. Let's grind it out and hit each other. And maybe somebody breaks an ankle. Maybe somebody falls wrong. No one's doing that. Who gets if they earn the 1 seed, they're taking the rest. They're resting up and they're healing up for next week. I'm in the same camp personally. I'm just not into it. I don't see the upside, and I see a lot more downside than upside. And I see a lot of upside to getting all these guys rested, like giving them a chance to recover, especially the Saquon Barkleys and the Daniel Joneses of the world. Like, you can convince me on some of these other guys, I guess, but like, especially, I guess, maybe younger guys playing in new roles. I don't know, but really I'd be good with just nothing. But we'll get to that a little because I want to get your take on that. Before we get to all that, I want to talk about something you mentioned with Daniel Jones. Look, yeah. I mean, look, it's 177 yards passing, but the 91 yards rushing count for a lot too. He almost had 300 total yards. He had some really big runs in this game. But one thing I saw again that I'm now seeing a lot more of is creativity and, in the same sense, efficiency in the red zone from Jones. This is now the 2nd week in a row where he drops back in the red zone. The original play read is not there. And what does he do? He doesn't sit in that pocket like he used to. Sit, look, wait, boom, hit, 4-sack fumble, or boom, hit, sack. He escapes, keeping his eyes down the field. One thing we've noticed a lot this year, he's keeping his eyes down the field while on the move and escaping, and then finding an open receiver. And that's what he did with Richie James. He's becoming a weapon now in the red zone because of his ability to not only escape the pressure, but also patiently keep his eyes up as he's moving and then just find open guys. He's now done this multiple times. I mean, he did this last week. He did this week. He's done it a lot over the second half of the season. This is a new wrinkle to his game entirely. And it's something I think can really help them, because one issue with Jones, the first 3 years of his career before this breakout season, was that he was one of the worst red zone quarterbacks I felt in the entire NFL. He had like no solutions. He would drop back. He wouldn't be a good red zone passer. He'd sometimes miss the first read, and then there was really nothing he could do. At that point, the old offenses, Garrett and even Shermer, weren't really using his legs. They weren't designing rollouts. They weren't designing like bootlegs type stuff in the red zone. So it was up to him. And now he's become a little bit more of a weapon in the red zone because of this ability to kind of keep his eyes down the field, escape, stay patient, then find an open receiver like he did on that Richie James touchdown. And obviously the Hodgins touchdown was just quick game, which is fine. But that to me is a big sign, because that could be like a possession here, a possession there in the playoffs that ends up being a touchdown that would have been a sack and a field goal, every other year.
That's 3 consecutive games he has a touchdown in that manner, if I'm not wrong,
okay.
right?
What was the one? What was the Washington one?
The Washington one, there wasn't one, but it was the Eagles game.
Okay.
So not 3 consecutive, but in recent weeks they have had 3 touchdowns like that. They had the one to Richie James that you just broke down. They had 2 to Isaiah Hodgins in the same manner. One wasn't really stepping up into the pocket. One, I think he rolled out to his right and then just extended the play. But it puts the defense into conflict, right? Because that defender knows Daniel Jones is an athlete. He knows Daniel Jones has that Ryan Fitzpatrick gene where he's going to dive headfirst for the pylon or the goal line for a touchdown. But he has to cover his guy. So he has to make that decision, that underneath defender. Okay, do I go for Daniel Jones and eliminate him as a rushing threat, or do I have to stay in coverage? Usually they go right after the quarterback and Jones just dumps it right behind their ear. Like, that's 3 times in the last 4 games that Jones has been able to convert touchdowns in that manner. So I think you're right, man. I think the red zone efficiency, not just because of Kafka and Daboll, but also because of the development and growth and the maturity of Daniel Jones, has kind of gone a long way. And even with the Isaiah Hodgins play today against the Colts, that was, quick game, but there was a recognition there, right? Because I think it was a 3-1 set, and the number 2 receiver, I'm not sure if it was Daniel Bellinger or who it was, he just released, kind of faded towards that back pylon, and that just expanded Bobby Okereke away from Isaiah Hodgins. Hodgins recognized it, and he just sat right at the goal line and caught the quick pass. But I think that's just a recognition right there from Hodgins and Daniel Jones to realize what the coverage is, what the coverage is doing right post snap, and then just be on the same page, which is just something that these two characters have right now. Like Hodgins and Daniel Jones are.
Yeah, they have sick chemistry right now.
They are just so freaking hot right now. And this is the time to be hot. And I absolutely love it, man. This is a practice squad guy, everyone says, but I don't know, man. He looks like a real player to me.
Yeah, not a practice squad guy by anything but what, people might say. He was also a draft pick, so it's not like, and we've seen enough now traits-wise, but it is interesting something you mentioned, like with past Giants teams, for example, like the 2011 defense comes to mind, for example, specifically the pass rush in 2011 in the playoffs. It wasn't a good unit for most of the year, right? And this Giants pass offense has not been a good unit for most of the year, but before the playoffs and into the playoffs, that defense clicked and it became a good unit again. The pass rush was back, which led to good pass coverage at times because there wasn't enough time. Even the pass coverage got a little bit better, the corners. And I'm seeing something similar this year with the pass offense, right? It wasn't good for most of the year, but over the last 3 weeks, and I'll even go back to like 3.5 or whenever that Washington overtime was, when they said, you know what, screw it, let's go to the gun and let's go to a little more tempo and let's run quick game and let this offense operate from Daniel Jones in the gun as a quarterback in a pass first offense. From that moment on, we started to see a little bit more clicking a lot more clicking from this past game. You could talk about the opponent, say whatever, but the offense has been so much better since they've gone past first. And we don't even have the weapons in place yet, right? We still need a true number one receiver. We could still do better at a lot of our offensive line positions, whether that be the guys on the roster just improving or upgrades in coming off seasons. But the point is, despite not having the personnel, we're starting to see a pass first offense be a better offense for the Giants. The Giants are a better offense. They were a better offense against Minnesota, and they were a better offense today than they've been all season. Balance is not worth enough. What you really want is offense. It doesn't matter how you get it. Get the offense. And when they've gone past first, they've been a much better offense. Today against the Colts, you can say, oh, it's not that good of a defense. I don't know. Again, decent defense all season. I was a good defense, actually, up until like 3 weeks ago. Now they've had some injuries. At worst, they're decent at this point, in my opinion, at least. And yet, in this game, despite the first drive, Nick, where it looked like there was just like weird communication issues, and I think the sun even impacted that third down play. After that, Jones just like locked the hell in. And the Giants didn't even, the only drive that got stopped after that until like garbage time was when Darius Slayton fumbled on a first down 6-yard gain that would have set up a 2nd and 4. Other than that, it was touchdown, field goal, like a couple field goals, touchdowns here, there. I think it was like 4 touchdowns. A pick 6. Like, I'm just saying when the Giants were on offense, though, the Giants didn't really punt in this game, which was crazy, right? Like, they have 1 punt all game. I don't know if
I believe
they even had one.
No,
punt
they had the 1 punt in the beginning of the game. Their first drive was a punt.
And then it was a punt.
I have it right here. 11 play, 71-yard touchdown drive after that. 9 play, 64-yard touchdown after that. Then it was the pick 6. Then it was a 9 play, 43-yard drive that ended in a field goal. That was right before half. Then you had the Darius Slayton fumble. Then a 6 play, 62-yard touchdown. 6 play, 70-yard touchdown, and then a turnover on downs at the end of the game. Like the Giants offense.
That's like. And what were we? We were pass first again, right? Like this is a better. I know it was fun with Barkley at the beginning of the year. Everyone thought we would be this grind out team. We had to be a grinding team. No, we don't. Daniel Jones is proving that you can run this offense through him.
Yes, absolutely. And we also know that teams go into facing the Giants and they're like, we got to stop 26. Got to stop 26. Now the Giants are like, okay, well, maybe you should focus on stopping 8 a little bit too. And again, the opponent sucks. We get that. But the Giants are now adding that to their arsenal, right? This Daniel Jones passing attack, the quick, efficient passing attack has now been effective for consistent weeks in high leverage situations for the New York Giants. That's something that we should be really excited about. And another reason why this more pass heavy approach is something that I feel like is a very smart move from this coaching staff is because of Daniel Jones's legs. You're forcing that defense to account for Daniel Jones, man. And I also feel like the play calling from Kafka has been excellent because there have been some timely halfback draw calls over the last couple weeks, right? And there also has just been this creative usage of when the Giants come out in what looks like 21 personnel. but it's actually 12 personnel with Daniel Bellinger as the fullback. We saw it last week on the deep over that Daniel Bellinger ended up fumbling because Brian Asamoah punched the ball out. Well, this week they had a tight end leak play. Well, I guess you should call it a fullback leak play with Daniel Bellinger from I formation leaking out of a cleared out area. And we're starting to see the Giants incorporate Daniel Bellinger as a fullback and then using him effectively out of the backfield. This is 2 consecutive weeks now where the Giants hit 2 big plays with Daniel Bellinger in that manner. And I think he can keep incorporating that package along with the pony package with Matt Breida and Saquon Barkley. Just gives your offense a different element heading into the playoffs.
I love that you brought that up, Nick, because I don't want to toot our own horn, but it is fun that when like the things we see on film and the stuff we talk about on tape, like we want to see more of this because we just noticed on tape actually comes to fruition. And we said that when we saw the play last week with Bellinger that got, the fumble. We're like, this was a really interesting wrinkle. We know he's going to come back to this. What I also said from watching the last 2 weeks of film is I saw more vertically oriented routes from Daniel Bellinger than I've seen all season in the last 2 weeks. And what do we get today? We got some vertical shots to Bellinger. We got the catch you talked about. There's also one over the middle on a 3rd and long. And speaking of 3rd and longs, man, it just feels like Daniel Jones is more comfortable than he's ever been in these 3rd and long or 3rd and whatever situations. And they're finding solutions more so than they ever did. Even to me, it feels like during the Shermer era. Even like everyone loves to talk about the Shermer year, right? Like that 1 year under Shermer. Well, I know he had 24 touchdowns passing, but again, remember, he had some really bad games and the offense didn't really move the ball outside of like 3 games against really bad teams. Now we're getting consistent movement. It doesn't matter who the opponents are. What we're getting here is consistent solutions, I should say, on these 3rd down situations. That's not something we've had during the Daniel Jones era. I think a lot of that is the improved pocket presence and manipulation, the coaching, having him run the ball. I mean, today, I think I saw a stat. I'm trying to find it now, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull it up again. It was a crazy stat about how much EPA Daniel Jones added today on scrambles. And what are scrambles again? We've gone over this in the past, but I'll go over again. They're considered any non-designed run. So anytime a quarterback drops back to throw the ball and ends up choosing to run, and there were plays that were dead in the water today that he just said, screw it, and took the sideline, got the run, and picked up the yards in the first down. I mean, there is no better play right now in the NFL than a scramble as far as EPA goes, expected points added. It's at like 5 in the 5s, and the best offense is below that. And so he's now added go ahead.
I'm curious if either of his touchdown runs would be considered scrambles, because definitely one isn't. That was just like looked like a bash quarterback power type of concept. And then the other one is the play action rollout where there are eligible receivers, but I think the primary design is for Daniel Jones to take it, just like in the Chicago game where he had 2 rushing touchdowns in that game as well. So I'm curious if those 2 runs are factored into the EPA there. I would imagine they are, because scrambling or any kind of rushing touchdown, especially when a quarterback uses his legs in the manner that Jones did in this game, that shoots the EPA up like crazy.
Yeah, it does. And look, that's a big factor in his big, breakout this season. I want to talk about the 3rd downs and, just Daniel Jones and what he's been able to do under pressure. Something interesting I saw this week, and we can get into more of the game as well, but this was an interesting thing. It's from Tyler Dunn, who has like a Going Long newsletter. He's like used to work in the NFL, or I think he still covers the NFL, but used to be like a reporter. And he said, and this is according to a source of his. So again, we should take all these source stuff with a grain of salt because it's hard to really know what's true and what's not true. But according to his source, Daboll told his source that Brian Daboll specifically scripted plays to make Daniel Jones look bad in training camp and to make Tyrod Taylor look good on purpose in order to test Jones's ability under pressure, both on the field and then with the media. And then he added that Daboll told the source that Jones passed those with flying colors. Now, what's interesting to me is, what did we talk about all preseason and all training camp, right? Daniel Jones looked terrible in training camp. People who went to those practices were like, he can't hit the right side of whatever the barn reference is. I don't know what that stupid moniker is, but you can't hit the barn side of a barn, whatever it is. And he didn't look good at the gate. I went to a couple of those practices. He did not look good. And now I think it kind of vibes with and checks out a little bit with this report from Tyler, who knows if it's true, but it makes sense. And if so, it's an interesting coaching tactic from Daboll.
That's some Herb Brooks stuff right there.
Yeah.
Do you get that reference?
Herb Brooks once taught me at a basketball camp, so I do get
that's so cool, man.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, R.I.P., man. Yeah.
Yeah,
Herb Brooks, man. Going back to Miracle, 1980 Olympics. U.S. hockey team. But anyways, yeah, that would be something.
Wait,
I know
no, I'm
that.
definitely thinking of the wrong person. There's no way I'm thinking of the right person.
Okay. When I said RIP, were you like, yo, when did that guy pass?
Well, not even that, because this guy who taught me might be dead, but the guy who taught me was a basketball guy. You're talking about a hockey guy, right?
Yeah, hockey coach. Yes.
This is definitely not the guy who taught me. This is it's somebody else. It's like it's the guy who taught whatever. Don't even worry about it. Don't even worry about who that reference was. But we'll let that go over my head. Anyway, make your point.
Yeah, so I think if we remember back to training camp, Daniel Jones struggled, and a lot of it was, hey, they're going to throw the kitchen sink at the offense, just a lot of winks, pressure packages, and things of that nature. I didn't necessarily ever kind of put it together that Brian Daboll may have been scripting plays to specifically make Daniel Jones look a little bit worse. I don't know if he would be scripting plays because he wants Daniel Jones to learn his system. So maybe he's just
seems weird.
That's where I'm a little like hazy on it, but maybe they just really dialed Wink's pressure up on, which is something we kind of already knew anyways. But either way, regardless of the fact, Daniel Jones has really taken to this offense and he looks good in it now. And hopefully he can carry that on.
Yeah, he did. And let's talk a little bit more offense, and then we can flip it over to some of the things we saw and liked on the defense. But on the offensive side of the ball, I thought, again, mentioning what I said before, hasn't been sacked now. No sacks against the Giants in 2 of their last 3 games. We got to give some credit to the offensive line, because the offensive line as a whole collectively in pass protection is playing much better, because if you want to operate this kind of pass first offense, first thing you need is the offensive line has to check out. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to get you to the point where you can feel comfortable calling this style offense. So we'll see on the tape, obviously, and we talked about it last week when we broke down the Vikings tape and we gave a grade out. Maybe that grade will be higher, around the same this week, but it was a good grade in pass protection. And I know some people disagreed with that, or just kind of really harping on like these few bad reps from Evan Neal and like one really bad one from Gates. But like last week I'm talking about. But overall, they threw the ball X amount of times. 4 reps doesn't encapsulate the entire pass protection, I don't think. So I'll be interested to watch that again this week.
As will I. And speaking on the offensive line, I got to say, on some of those Saquon Barkley runs, and then the Daniel Jones quarterback power bash concept, which was what I think it was. I don't have the play in front of me. The backside blocking looked like it did back when the Giants were in the beginning of the season against Tennessee and against Carolina. There was a block that Glowinski threw, and I don't know if it might have been clipping, but we'll have to check it out on the All-22. And it was on that second touchdown run by Daniel Jones, man. He got to the second level and he hit, and it might have been clipping, but either way, he hit the second level defender and just tossed him away. And that eliminated a defender that Daniel Jones had to deal with. There were a couple other runs where I saw Glowinski and Feliciano up at the second level throwing key critical blocks for Saquon Barkley. So that's going to be something that I'm really interested in seeing, because if the run blocking out of 11 personnel can get back to what it was in the beginning of the year with this passing attack, you're talking about an offense now that really has a dangerous skill set or dangerous approach than I think we originally, we just anticipated it all this season. I don't think we thought that this passing attack would get as smooth as it's been over the last couple of weeks. And if they can run the football, Dan, it could be very, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point you made, because I was going to ask you about, we just talked about, the pass protection's doing their part. The run blocking really felt like it was as good as it's been since that early part of the season. Now, maybe it's the opponent, I don't know, but they were moving bodies. The numbers back it up. The Giants started 19 of the 30. This is according to Doug Analytics. They started 19 of their 30 series with a run, or possessions with a run. And that doesn't make sense. 19 of their 30 probably first downs, I would assume that means, because they didn't have 30 possessions, obviously. So it must be first downs to the run. 18 of 19 of them, 18 of 19 of those went for a new first down. That's pretty impressive stuff, and that's just like wild to think about. And especially when you look at the numbers that kind of coincide with it, which is the personnel. The Giants had 42 of 49 plays from 11 personnel, and they were in shotgun. And all those were in shotgun. And then all their plays from the shotgun were 11 personnel. And 11 of their 13 plays from under center were all runs. So it wasn't like they were trying to really hide or disguise what they wanted to do here. They were just able to do it, which leads me to believe maybe this offensive line won the point of attack on a consistent basis, which is a great sign.
Yeah, because they have some guys on their defensive line.
Buckner's playing, right?
Yeah, Kwity Paye was out there. There's some solid football players. And the Giants haven't really run the football out of 12 personnel all that often recently. It's been a much more 11 personnel rushing attack approach over the last couple weeks, and it's been effective. Like the EPA is positive on those 11 personnel runs. I'm trying to think. There was a week, I think it was week 11, because I was talking to Doug at Analytics about some of this in the DMs. I think it might have been week 11 where I don't even think the Giants had a 12 personnel run, So either way, man, like that's not something that we thought around the bye week, because the Giants were so reliant on their 12 personnel package. So the fact that they have this 11 personnel package that they can pass and run out of is something exciting.
Yeah, it is. And it just feels like, again, we've seen the expansion of the pass game, but I just feel like more so than anything else with what made this pass game look so much better these last 3-4 weeks, whatever it's been now, almost a month, is the timing. That's always what it comes down to with these pass games, especially when you are a quick game based pass offense. I'm sure it matters even more there. We are, obviously the Giants are, but the timing just feels so good, man. When James is out of his break, the ball's where it's supposed to be. When Hodgins is out of his break, the ball's where it's supposed to be. The timing and the ball placement, which is, a lot in part based on the timing, is crisp and it's there. And the delivery is there. Jones is throwing a really good ball late. I mean, really all season. I feel like, again, I mentioned this before, I'll mention it again. I feel like Jones's arm strength has been better this season than it's been at any point in his career. I don't know if that's true. There's no way to tangibly judge it. It just feels that way from watching him. The ball comes out much better, much cleaner than it did, especially late in the year, right? Like those December, January months for Jones, I used to see like a few balls that were like, what's going on with the weather? And there hasn't been too many bad weather games yet for the Giants in this kind of context, but still the ball's coming out good. And I just feel like right now this pass game's clicking, which is great because it's clicking at the perfect time heading into the playoffs. Let's flip it over to the other side of the ball. Some interesting notes on the other side of the ball. Azeez Ojulari, had that basketball ankle roll last week and then was good to go to play this week, but only played 7% of the snaps. I wonder how much, Nick, that has to do with the Giants coming out 14-3 and then 21-3. I don't know, because he didn't play much until that, in that time span when it was still considered technically a game. And I guess it still is at 24-3. You could still lose that game, but I don't know. The other thing that was interesting, I thought, was Xavier McKinney came back, started, and played a shit ton of snaps. The first pass, their only really good offensive play of the game, the Colts, like when Foles just kind of chucked it up. I thought McKinney kind of made a pretty bad play on that. And I was wondering if maybe it was the hand, like he's second guessing it with the hand. I don't know what was going on there. I heard him
just said he needs to knock off the rust.
Yeah, he said he needed to knock off the rust. I don't know. But what do you make of those two developments to start, the Ojulari and the McKinney?
I think the Ojulari thing, I think you're right. I mean, the Giants were comfortable enough to dress this guy. And I don't know if he re-injured anything. We never got word. Brian Daboll, when he did his post-game presser, had no injury information. He didn't talk to any of the trainers or anything like that. But we haven't heard anything about him being injured. And it makes sense that you want to heal up a guy who has been injured since training camp. And the Giants didn't really need Azeez Ojulari in this game. So that doesn't really surprise me. We'll have to wait and see if there's anything else that comes out. But in terms of Xavier McKinney, look, like you said, he hadn't played defense or anything in what was it, 7 weeks or something like that. The last time he's played was against Seattle. So he's going to knock off the rust. It was one deep wobbly pass to Paris Campbell, and the former Ohio State receiver made a really good play on the football over 3 defensive backs, but I'm not worried about Xavier McKinney.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. I'm not worried about Xavier McKinney, but I'm not like penciling him in yet as like a big time impact contributor for us in the playoffs until I see a little bit more from him, and just kind of want to see. I know he had a pretty decent day. Otherwise, he had like 4 solo tackles, so he was like around the football. We'll see on the film. I shouldn't say that. I want to watch the tape and then go from there, see what kind of positioning he was in and stuff like that. But I'm worried about how this hand thing will impact safety for like, the rest of the season. We'll see what happens there. On the injury front, though, other than him, they got Leonard Williams, who left the game with a burner. But I kind of feel like this Leonard Williams situation is like he's just going to be playing hurt all year. He's been playing hurt all year. He's not 100% healthy, and yet he's still really effective. So I'm not too worried about that one yet. I heard after the game that Adoree Jackson's really close. Now, I wouldn't play him against the Eagles this week. I don't think he needs to shake off the rust. I'm not worried about that. I'd rather give him one more week to rest that ankle. But we'll see what or not that ankle. He has the knee injury. We'll see what happens there. But he's close, so that's really good. I think Adoree Jackson at this point, Nick, will make a bigger impact than McKinney will.
I think so too. Yeah. I think Adoree Jackson just shifts every other cornerback into their rightful spot. Like Moreau is much better as a number 2 than he is a number 1. I feel like Cordell Flott, when he's out there, look, we watched the film on Cordell Flott last week. He was in position a lot, and there were a couple of transitions that I felt like he got out of his break really quickly, clicked and closed downhill. We went over it on the film, the defensive film. I think Flott is an interesting player, but now he doesn't have to be relied on as a number 2 opposite of freaking Fabian Moreau. So yes, the Adoree Jackson addition would be excellent for this team. Kayvon Thibodeau is really breaking out. And we've already said this for the last several weeks. He's having these games. He had the touchdown against Washington, which was the Giants' only offensive touchdown of that game. In a huge game. Look at what the Washington Commanders are dealing with right now. They have lost their last 3, is it now? And they're out of the playoffs, right? I believe they were eliminated. Yeah, they were eliminated. That could have been the Giants. Everything fell up down. And Kayvon Thibodeau with that strip sack touchdown against Taylor Heineke was such a big play in the landscape of this season. So in this game, the first play of the game, tackle for loss, Dan. Tackle for loss. He just shoots right outside of Mo Alley Cox and makes that tackle. Then he has the almost pick 6, which was later in the game. And then he also had the he had the sack, which he was doing snow angels next to a dying Nick Foles, which was not great, but I don't think he's addressed this after the game. I don't think he was aware that Nick Foles was actually injured. He was just celebrating because he was happy he had a sack.
Yeah, there's Twitter doctors or Twitter video doctors who are like, look, he looked over at him, so he recognized it. Maybe he's just turning his head and doing the snow angel and not really he's got a helmet on. I'm not so sure he's looking at Foles oh, look at him dead. I'll just keep going back to what I'm doing with the snow angels. He said he wasn't doing it. I'll take his word at it. I could care less about that anyway, personally, to be completely frank. But what I care about is that he is breaking out. He is an impact player for them right now, and it's a great thing to have. But in addition to him, look at this, man. We've got a guy who's played, I think, the second most snaps for this defense in Dexter Lawrence as an interior defensive lineman at 350 or whatever he is, 335. I don't even know what he weighs at this point. He's playing an absurd amount of snaps for interior guy. And yet, despite this amount of snaps that they've put him on the field for, he's not dropping off. Today, he had a rep against Quentin Nelson where I was like, oh my God, dude. And I know Quentin Nelson's having a bad year and he's been injured and stuff, but it's still Quentin Nelson, dude. He freaking manhandled him, drove him back off the ball and into the ground for a pressure. He's
for a sack.
For a sack, even for a pressure, for a sack. This dude is potentially the best defensive interior lineman in the NFL this season. I don't know. There's other people who are making the case for other people, which is fine. And I know he's still not getting the credit he deserves around the Twitter sphere from some of the PFF guys that I respect and just guys who don't cover one team. But I don't know who's playing better than him right now in the interior around the NFL, especially with Aaron Donald out. I just don't know. Maybe there are guys, but I don't know how, because every game he gets pressure. Every game he dominates these one-on-one battles. It seems like almost every game he's getting a sack. He's just dominant. So we've got 2 guys now in him and Thibodeau. We're playing lights out football consistently, down to down, snap to snap on that defense heading into the playoffs. So I'm really excited about what I saw from the Giants defensive line today. They won the point of attack. They won it early and they never gave it up.
I think what makes Dexter Lawrence just so freaking unique is the guys that he's in the conversation with is Chris Jones, Quinnen Williams as a younger player who's having a really good season. Those guys are 305, 310 pounds. This dude, Dexter Lawrence, is 340 plus pounds. Like you said, playing as many snaps as he's playing and being as much of a pain in the ass as he is as a pass rusher. This is, the all-pro, whatever, I don't know what he was voted, all that stuff. He got Pro Bowl. This guy's an all-pro player. He's playing at that level. He might not get that recognition, but he is the catalyst to this defense right now. He is the best player on the defense. He is the player that offensive coordinators are like, bro, we got to figure out a way to block this guy, because it's not even just the pass rushing. That is obviously amazing, and that is primary, but what he's doing as a run defender, dude, he was making tackles way down the line of scrimmage again. And that's another thing that we can talk. I don't want to be negative because this is a really positive podcast, but we like to be objective here. Zach Moss had way too many yards on the ground against the Giants, and it wasn't all during, a lot of it was kind of garbage time, but still, you don't want to see a guy like Zach Moss averaging 4.9 yards per carry. So I still think the run defense overall for the New York Giants is going to be an issue moving forward because the second level is weak. But if you want to run in the interiors or do kind of stretch zone, you better block up Dexter Lawrence, because he has that type of athletic ability and recognition to cover the ground and get to the location that he needs to be to make the tackle.
And that's what they're going to try to do in 2 weeks when it's the Vikings, which is great. Like, I agree. We're nowhere near fixing this run defense. I said it last week on the defensive podcast. This isn't going to be fixed this season, but we still get to operate in the world where it is a matchup based run defense, right? Like teams that run a lot of zone against the Giants, that's a plus for the Giants. That's where our run defense deficiencies are minimized. If you want to run a lot of zone, and that's what the Vikings do. If you're going to be like a Cowboys style run offense, that's bad news. I don't think the Giants are going to ever really stop the Cowboys run game this year. It's not really possible for them based on the personnel, but that's fine because not every team runs that style of blocking scheme. So, and I know they mix it up too, the Cowboys, but they do it a lot against the Giants. They were the first team to really expose them this year in that Monday night game, week 3. And then since then, you've seen teams kind of fall in that path. But like you said, he helps you when you're trying to run those inside or those stretch zones, those types of things. With Dexter Lawrence in the field, it's not as easy to do. It's a lot harder to do. And I want to talk about Landon Collins, man, because he reached, I think, 19.1 miles per hour on his pick 6 today. The dude had a pick 6. The Giants haven't had a pick 6 this season. We have a 1 pick 6 all year, and we got it from Landon Collins, a guy who they signed off the scrap heap. He's kind of learning linebacker. And one thing about him, man, he brings a different style of speed to that linebacker position. Like, you could have a lot of different guys on the second level there that aren't going to jump, that aren't going to undercut that throw, jump it, have the ability and speed to undercut that throw, jump it, then pick it and house it for a touchdown. And he did all that. And I watched it and I saw it happening with my own eyes. I saw him. I was like, he's undercutting this thing. And he did. It was such a cool scene. He's reached almost 20 miles per hour, which is, pretty fast for somebody who's basically playing like a linebacker role at this point for the Giants. Housed it. Whole thing, touchdown, just an awesome thing for this dude. I mean, at this point, we know it. We've been saying it for weeks. I think we said it on our defensive podcast 2 weeks ago, where like Landon Collins has basically, I think the way I termed it was Landon Collins is demanding playing time with his play on the field. He's demanded it, not like with his words. He's demanded it with his play. And now we see it, man. He's going to be a piece that's potentially going to factor in big time for the playoffs.
Yeah, and he looks great out there too. He had the one mishap last week in the run game, or was that against Washington? It might have been against Washington.
Yeah.
And Daboll brought it up too, and we noticed the exact play that Brian Daboll was referencing. But other than that, he had huge plays on third down that got Washington off the field. And ever since then, he's just been playing well. That pick 6, man, that was a bunch formation. You had someone run a deep 7. You had the guy in the flat, kind of like a sail concept, and then the vertical element to it. And he just stayed square, shimmied outside, and then just read the eyes of the quarterback, jumped the route, pick 6. Did the Giants only have 1 pick 6 last year? And it was that Xavier McKinney against the Raiders one? Or did they have any other ones?
They did not have any others. Yeah, they're not really a pick 6 team right now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was just the Xavier McKinney one against Hunter Renfrow, which was really impressive. But man, yeah, I'm hyped for Landon Collins. Like, that's a Hollywood type of story, dude. Like, you start with the Giants, you're all pro. You almost win defensive player of the year in 2016. Gettleman takes over. He's not going to re-sign a lot of those veterans that weren't drafted by his regime. He has to go sign a contract, a nice contract, a hefty contract over there in Washington. But then his time in Washington is really just kind of stifled because of that Achilles injury. And he comes back. And now he's just on the practice squad, kind of toiling away, earns his way into the starting lineup, gets a pick 6 in the playoff clinching game. The first time you're going back to the playoffs since your 2016 season when you were dominant. And that's Hollywood stuff, dude.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty damn cool for Landon Collins. He played, they brought him in, and then they didn't play him for a while. He was just on the practice squad, and you're almost like, what's going to happen here? And I'm really glad they expanded their kind of thought process on that to bring him back because, man, that would have been a mistake, honestly, by the coaching staff to not bring him back into the starting lineup.
I thought he might have been like cooked or something. I was like, he looked fine, but he only played like a couple handful of snaps, like 16, 20 snaps ish in those first couple games when he was elevated from the practice squad. And then I think the Giants just realized, like, look, our linebackers suck. We got to stop like cycling in these guys.
Yeah.
We need to do something different. Let's go to 21. And that was an excellent move, as you already said.
And so let's move it forward now and talk a little bit about what you were talking about before. The two things I want to get to here are one, and by the way, Collins played 55% of the snaps today, which is a pretty high number. Like, I'm fine with him in that range. And I think that's the range that he will be in moving forward, which is a range where you can make an impact.
It's a little difficult to read into the snap percentages in this game because it was a blowout. So that's like, if this was a competitive game, how many snaps would Landon Collins play? That's what we got to read into a little bit.
And his ease, we don't know about that too. Good point.
Yeah.
But moving it forward, the Giants have now clinched the 6th seed. And no matter what they do next week, they will be the 6th seed. Now, as Nick alluded to earlier, according to Doug Analytics, there's like a 91% probability the Giants will play the Vikings, but that is also based on like implied odds that he's using. So it's like a plus 980 implied probability, which is not. So it's like I don't really know too much about implied odds outside of what they mean for poker, and I won't bore everyone by going into my poker thing here.
Please do. Yeah,
implied odds, but essentially what he's saying is like based on the fact that the Vikings are 1.5 point favorites over Chicago and the Niners are 13-point favorites over Arizona. I'm pretty sure it's that second part. The Niners are 13-point favorites over Arizona. There's a 91% probability that the Niners won't lose and the Giants will play the Vikings. So anyway, with that in mind, the Giants locked in the 6th seed. The Eagles now, with a surprising loss to the Saints, Jalen Hurts was supposedly very close to playing, did not play. Feel like they felt like they didn't have to play him. They felt like they're going to win regardless with Minshew. I think they know now they're not going to win with Minshew no matter what. They'll probably play Hurts next week, the Eagles. They're playing for the 1 seed. They're playing to win the NFC East now that Dallas has come all the way back, stormed all the way back. And I'm pretty sure if Dallas wins and the Eagles lose, Dallas gets in. So if the Giants beat the Eagles and the Cowboys win, the Cowboys then win the NFC East with the same record as the Eagles because they have the better division record. And then the Niners take the 1 seed over the Cowboys by, whatever the common opponents is or whatever the tiebreaker is there. Niners would be the 1, Cowboys would be the 2. Eagles would drop all the way to the 5. Giants would remain the 6. So with that in mind, the Giants can play a spoiler role here in this game and knock the Eagles out. So I think I made my case a little bit earlier, but to me, there's more value in using this as a bye week for your players, essentially, if I'm the Giants coach. And I don't think that's what the Giants are going to do. And I'm not going to go crazy if they don't do that. Like Brian Daboll can do whatever the hell he wants, whatever he thinks is best. Remember, Tom Coughlin during the Giants Super Bowl season notoriously or famously played all of his starters against the Patriots, and that's when they were going for 16-0, almost beat the Patriots. I think it's a little bit different because the Patriots are going for 16-0. To me, that's a different scenario than the Eagles just going for the 1 seed. Just my personal opinion. But it's a similar scenario in the sense that Giants didn't need to play those players. They already clinched. And, I think it might have been the same where they couldn't have even changed their seed, but they might have been able to change seed. I don't remember.
No, the Giants were locked in at that point.
At the same
Giants had nothing to gain. They had nothing to gain from that game.
Okay.
And Coach Coughlin still went out there and challenged them. And honestly, man, like that was huge going back because Giants realized they could compete with the Patriots. And obviously that bore out.
And that could be the same case and the same case can be made, right? Like if the Giants come out here and play all their starters and try their hardest to win this game and compete with the Eagles, the case can, they can feel confident. And I think there is value to that stuff. I'm not trying to downgrade and say none of this has any value. All that has value to me. I'm just weighing all options here. What has more value? Getting your team a bye week that you would never get, that really only is designed now. The NFL designs the playoffs that only 1 team in each conference is going to get the bye week. And a lot of people subscribe to the bye week. A lot of coaches, a lot of players I've heard say the bye week is huge to get. It helps you for your playoff run. And a lot of these 1 seeds do go on to at least, very least play in the conference championship most of the time. So you get the bye week. You also, on the other hand, this side of the decision, you get the bye week, but you also take away any chance of injury. You take away any chance of a bad fall for Andrew Thomas. And I'm knocking on wood by saying all these. I don't even want to bring up the names in these examples because
you're getting too specific here.
I don't even want to bring up the names, but that's in play. If you play your guys, it's NFL. Freak injuries happen all the time. Kyler Murray tore his ACL just running on a scramble. Like anything can happen. It's football. And we've seen a slew of injuries already to the Giants this season. So on one hand, you risk the injury and you don't give your team a bye week and you take them into the very next game against Minnesota that following week. They're banged up, whatever. Or you take the chance to do what you did against the Patriots in 2007. You give the fight. You maybe knock the Eagles out if things go great. And then you put the Cowboys in the 1 seed, which I don't, again, think that has too much value to you, but maybe it does. So to me, there's more value on the other side of it personally. So I wouldn't play my starters. If anything, I would play them for a little bit. And there's not a chance in hell Saquon Barkley would ever touch the field if I was the coach for next game. That's so I understand for me.
I understand exactly where you're coming from. I don't feel like you're being unreasonable or anything like that. I think I'm on the opposite end of it, though.
Yep.
Especially since the Philadelphia Eagles not only beat you in the last matchup, they absolutely annihilated you. They destroyed you, and they embarrassed you on your home field. I think the Giants should come out here, and I think players like Leonard Williams, Dory Jackson, players who are injured, playing maybe through something, have been on the injury report. Those guys can rest, yes. But I kind of think the Giants should go into this with that mindset that we're going to win this Week 18 game. Let's put our best foot forward. The Saquon Barkley one is one where I'm kind of going back and forth in my mind with that. Specifically because, yes, obviously Saquon Barkley gives you that best chance to win, but I feel like he has struggled this entire season, as a lot of players do in the NFL, with maybe ailments to his shoulder. He looks pretty fresh now. I feel like the Giants have done a really good job taking the workload off of him. I don't know if I would want Saquon Barkley's utilization specifically to be 100%, which kind of takes away from what I just said. But that's also because Matt Breida and Gary Bright will have looked good when they have been used. Right. So I think that could be the approach. Like, look, we're going in here to win. Maybe we're going to pull off the reins on a couple of different players, leave out the guys who are playing through some stuff, have them get healthy. But ultimately, we're going to go into Philadelphia and try to win this football game.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. Like, I don't know. I'm not like sold on the side.
Yeah,
I'm not
no,
either. It's like I see that side of it too. Like, look, you got embarrassed by the Eagles, prove you can compete, maybe even knock them off. It's tough, especially it's like you said Barkley, but also Jones, man. Like, he's another guy that you can't afford to lose for the playoffs at all. And I'm not gonna say, like, look, he's made it through his first, again, knock on wood, at least going into the last week of the season, he's made it through his first fully healthy season. And he did get injured earlier, but he played through it. So he never missed any time. It's the first year in his entire career that's been the case, which is a big sign. Like, that was a big thing that I needed to see. Part of, like, going into the season, I wanted to see better pocket awareness and pocket manipulation. I wanted to see better processing. I wanted to see better ability to throw on the move. But I also wanted to see better availability, right? Like, that was an important thing for me and a lot of Giants fans. Like, can he stay on the field? Because that was always Eli Manning's most underrated trait, his availability. And when you're the starting quarterback, when you're the most important position in the entire sport, you need to be on the field. So that's the other one that I'm like feeling tricky about. But yeah, go ahead.
No, I just feel like it's not because, like, we talk a lot about Jalen Hurts and certain quarterbacks, and it's ironic because Jalen Hurts ended up hurting his shoulder.
Right.
But these quarterbacks who avoid contact, Daniel Jones is the exact opposite of that. Daniel Jones takes like 3 hits a game, Dan, that should shelve a lot of other players around the league. But that guy is just tough as nails, bro. He took a couple hits in this game against the Colts when the Giants were up. And I'm like, bro, take care of yourself, man. But like, you can't help but admire and respect what he's doing, the physicality that he's playing with. There's a reason why. And it's not just the work ethic. It's not just the first guy in, last guy out, all the cliches, but there is a reason why everybody who plays for the New York Giants and who is on that Giant staff loves and adores Daniel Jones. And it's reasons like that. It's because he does put his body on the line.
Yeah, it's a total double-edged sword, right? Because on one hand, he's taking hits that some of them are so stupid. Like the one he had today that really pissed me off was when he was scrambling down the left sideline and he had a huge run. And like, he tried to get the extra 3 yards out of it and then takes a low hit to the ankle that like he falls on awkwardly. And I'm like, he got up fine, but it's like, dude, that was 3 total yards you gain extra. Like, get the hell out of bounds. And then later in the game, I thought he did something that really showed something good to me. He was on one of those scrambles, like a wide open run around the end. There's just no one there. And he slid at the end of it. And he didn't try to lower his shoulder. But it's a double-edged sword because every time he does try to lower the shoulder and take those extra yards, every single person that's playing with him is like, this is our guy. Like, he's not just a quarterback. He's a football player. He's not, he's not Tom Brady. I don't want to say Tom Brady because I'm sure he has a lot of respect. But like, he's not like one of these quarterbacks who, like, maybe like a Nick Foles, like, or somebody who just like is standing back there and wants to just throw the ball from the pocket and not really move off the spot and not ever lower his shoulder to get extra yards or do anything like that. So it's a real big double-edged sword because the players and the teammates love it. I'm sure the coaches don't love it, to be honest with you. They don't want him taking those like low hits and just extra hits, but that's something I don't think it'll always be that way for Jones. I think he'll get smarter with it. You know why? Because he's gotten smarter with almost everything else to this point.
He has. He's really developed his game, bro. He stiff-armed Bobby Okereke to the ground.
Yeah, I saw that.
I mean, I don't think he gained any yards, but the fact that he put his arm out there against an a good NFL linebacker, and put him on the deck is huge. And Okereke, I think he was the one who also went at Daniel Jones with the elbow, and you saw Ben Bredesen just get up in his face. It's like, dude, there's so much respect for Daniel Jones. Although any quarterback who takes a hit like that, I feel like any offensive line with any
there was a weird video that came out this like 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you saw it, where like Russell Wilson took a huge hit to the ground and none of his teammates like went over. Lineman teammates went over to pick him up. That was a sad thing to see for Russell Wilson. But obviously,
it's gotten to a point with Russ where you have so many Denver Broncos players coming out on Twitter and being vocal about how hard he works and everything. They're trying to talk the guy up, which I appreciate. But dude, what a absolute shit show the Denver Broncos are. And there were rumors with the Giants and Russell Wilson. Oh my God, could you imagine being saddled to that contract? Oh, death, dude. That'd be terrible.
I'm so happy that's not the case right now. We never even did any of it. Thankfully, we didn't do any of the legwork. You and I, like, we at one point were thinking, like, should we look into some of his tape and see if we want to make a case to the trade for him or not? We just kind of like let it play out. And I think we both felt like it wasn't going to happen. There wasn't enough, like, there wasn't enough smoke for us to really investigate. But
yeah, it was that, and it was the picks too. We didn't want to, because the Giants had two top 10 picks, and we were like, that would be much wiser.
Up either of those, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
But having said that, if they had just gone against if they had just done it, we would have had to opine on it anyway. But if they had just done it, it would be really tough to have this podcast right now. I'm gonna be honest with you, Nick. If I knew right now that the Giants had Russell Wilson's contract for the next at minimum 3 years, I think it is, where they can really get out of it, I don't know how I could have given any positivity moving forward. It's like, I don't know what Denver Broncos are going to do at this point with the situation that they're in. That's how bad it can be. But this is not a Broncos podcast. Sorry to you guys who are Broncos fans who might have stumbled in, because last week we had some Vikings fans stumble into our reaction podcast and go nuts because we weren't giving them enough credit or whatever, which is funny because we're going to see them again in 2 weeks. But let's talk about that now. That's where we can close this.
Kicked against Green Bay too.
Asses kicked against Green Bay. And also something just to keep in mind and note, I'm not going to complain about. They had some offensive line injuries in game today. Just going to say. I was going to say they lost 2 linemen in game. It's only 2 weeks away from when they're playing the Giants. So just something to think about. 14 days for those guys to get ready. And I'll take anything we can get. I don't care. We've already had enough injuries. So I don't care. But moving forward to that matchup, because it's most likely going to be that, again, 91% probability the Giants will face the Vikings as the 3-6 matchup in 2 weeks from now. Moving it back to that, Nick. That's why I think the Adoree Jackson return, and I think it is going to happen in time for that game at the very least, maybe even this week against the Eagles, is so important. Having Adoree Jackson in that game changes everything I think that Wink can do schematically. He might not pay all that attention to Jefferson, and he might be able to take away some of what Hawkinson did to kill them, and different things like that really hurt the Giants. If he can feel confident with Adoree Jackson on Jefferson, or even like if he wants to continue to do stuff like that when Jefferson runs that post corner, he's going to run that post corner. Like, I feel like he runs that route so often because he's just so hard to guard on that. Adoree might be able to hang with him on that route. No one else on this roster can come close. Love Fabian Moreau. He's a nice, fun addition. He's done his best. He does not have anywhere near the athleticism or speed or juice to cover him on that kind of route, or a lot of the different routes that Jefferson runs. Neither does Flott, neither does any of these players. So that's where I'm pushing it forward. And I'm like, man, I was looking about that Vikings game from last week. Having Adoree Jackson on the field probably would have won the Giants the game, in my opinion.
I think so too. I think definitely you had a number 1 cornerback to cover Justin Jefferson. You could see what kind of impact that can have. I mean, look at what Jair Alexander was able to do today. Right. And I think there's probably a little bit of a difference between Jair Alexander when he's fully dialed in and Adoree Jackson, although Adoree Jackson, I feel like it's a very underrated cornerback.
And we'll have a lot more on that matchup as it comes closer. We're going to have a lot more on the Big Blue Banter podcast in general. This week, we're going to have our offensive film breakdown tomorrow, defensive film breakdown the game after. We know you guys said we didn't have a preview this past week, but we're going to try to potentially do that for this Eagles game. We'll see what we can do there. But at the very least, maybe a mailbag, something in that nature. And then as we move it forward to that playoff week, a lot of content coming in that playoff week. Nick and I are going to come up with some interesting things to get everybody riled up and pumped up, because the Giants are back in the playoffs, baby. I can't believe it. Look, I predicted before the year the Giants would go 9-8, Nick, and I got a lot of flack for it. I got a lot of pushback for it, and it wasn't like there wasn't too much logic at the time to consider like the Giants could be a 9-win team. But the reason I said I thought they could be a 9-win team was, one, I thought they were going to have this massive coaching edge from what I saw early in the preseason and from all the things I read and just what I knew about these guys coordinating both sides of the ball. That proved true. And the other thing I thought was that this passing offense was going to take time. It was going to be, something where it doesn't look good at first, but over time, as you get the system down, especially when you know it's like choice routes and things of that nature, and you need like kind of like to be on the same page, and the timing is so huge, it would get better. And that's also starting to prove true. It may not hold. I hope it holds, but over the last 3 or 4 games, it has held and it has been true. And so today, Nick, we'll close it on this. Today, I was actually one of my most famous moments in the sports industry happened today, Nick. I don't know if you saw this, but
the cold takes exposed.
Yes, I finally got hit by freezing cold takes. One of the most powerful accounts. I had like 15 different people that I barely talked to text me immediately when it happened. And I think, Nick, I don't know if this is the true, but I think I might be the first human being in the history of freezing cold takes to be on the right side of it, because I wasn't, most people when freezing cold takes tweet something, it's usually like someone says like, oh, Patrick Mahomes is going to be the biggest bust in NFL history. And then it's like, oh yeah, look at this idiot. But the freezing cold takes was actually my co-host from the Fantasy Football Today podcast, Adam Azer, who's also a Giants fan, but obviously more pessimistic than me and didn't buy into Daboll, quote tweeting me when I was like, on August 11th, I think it was. I think that's where the tweet is from, August 11th, where I was like, you know what? I feel really confident the Giants are moving in the right direction from all these things I've seen. I was talking about exactly what I said before. I think they're going to have a coaching edge. And I said, I think the passing game will click with time and will start off really slow, but get good, at the end. And I said, I can see this team winning. I said, I can't see why this team isn't going to win 9 games. And then he quoted tweeted me, Adam Azer, he said, 9 games? Dan is the biggest homer ever. The Giants will be lucky to win 5 games, and that's what got freezing cold take. So I come out on the good end of this. He retweeted Adam's quote tweet, and then everybody underneath will see like my good take under there. So it was a good day for me, man.
Excellent day, yes, yeah. And yeah, I mean, dude, we both picked. I think I had him at 8 and 9.
You were at 8.
Yep. After the preseason, I was like, oh man, I was a little bit more pessimistic about it. But looking at the schedule, it's just there were so many winnable games. There were so many teams that were picking in the top 10 that were on the Giants' schedule. So the coaching
4-0 against the AFC South, the Giants were
4-0, bro.
We just play this division every year.
Yeah, seriously, man. Absolutely. That's a great, I see. Yeah, they completed it with this Colts win. But the Giants, bro, they got it done this year, man. It's a good future, I hope, man.
Yeah,
good future.
For sure.
They have the right people in place right now.
I didn't tweet it last week, but I was close to doing it, and I might do a little tweet on it this week. I mean, I'll say this is a larger topic, so it's a bad thing to end a podcast on because they could do like another 40 minutes on it. But I don't know, man. I think this is the best I've felt about Daniel Jones's future, maybe ever. Maybe since that 2019 debut against Tampa. I really feel that way from what I've been seeing lately. And so we'll see if it all plays out. And I said, like, I was going to tweet it, and I was like, I know this could come back to bite me, but this is the best it's looked to me. I feel like the strides he's made have been consistent at this point. And more importantly, I'm seeing what I wanted to see the whole time, right? To me, it was never going to be true. It was never going to be anything sustainable or tangible unless we were a pass first offense. That's where I was always at with this. Early in the season when he was, operating the play action, running a bunch and like occasionally throwing something, it was like, all right, this is pretty smoke and mirrors. I don't know how sustainable it is even for this year. It's certainly not sustainable for the future. And then it wasn't even sustainable for this year, right? Seattle figured it out, and then a bunch of teams figured it out. So what did the Giants do? They adjusted. And now that they have moved to a pass-first offense, that's why I can start to get excited. That's when I'm starting to think like, okay, now I'm looking at the tools. Now I'm looking at the development of this prospect, and I'm starting to get a little bit excited about where it can go. So we'll obviously talk more about that later. I didn't want to bring that up at the end of the podcast, but do you have anything on that, or should we sign off?
No, I think we're good to sign off. Excited to get into the tape, bro.
Yes. Tape coming this week. Obviously, you guys have a great rest of your week. Keep it locked and loaded, and go Giants.